Oh, Seven Citizens, Black here from Castle Black Gaming, bringing you one of my rare opinion pieces today. But after spending a lot of time in Starfield the past week, I cannot help but to make comparisons and also daydream about the things I wish Star Citizen could do better that Starfield does wonderfully. Now, before you head down to the comments to slander this video as being Starfield biased, this is not that type of video. This video was meant as a way to suggest the things that Star Citizen really needs to do better, and most of these are things that we have all been wanting or needing long before Starfield came along, and are features that are either in the works or planned already. So it's not like I'm wanting Star Citizen to become something that it's not. This is just my take on what I believe it needs to up its game on before Starfield players who might be new to the space genre of games might be expecting if they were to come to Star Citizen after having played Starfield. You can hate on this video if you want, but to deny that Starfield has not done some things right would just be kidding yourself, and in no way is this video a knock against Star Citizen, which I do deem to be my favorite space game still, and I also am not wanting Star Citizen to change direction or become an involved RPG. The two games are different and yet share similarities. Now, let's get to the list, and the order here does not matter except for the final one, which because of what it is, it needs to be final. For many who I have spoken to who have played Starfield, they immediately point out the combat with NPCs as something that shines over Star Citizen, and I would have to agree, but only in that the combat works and their NPCs work better than Star Citizen's for the most part. Now, this is not just for combat, but even during interactions like talking or the NPC selling items. I do like buying things from terminals in Star Citizen, but the NPCs behind counters who are supposed to have functions need to work better than they currently do. We all know that performance is the big issue, and when you get on a fresh server, you get NPCs who work well in combat that is pretty much fire. We also know that better combat AI is coming with the ability for them to heal one another or dodge grenades, or they're seeking out enemies is going to be top notch. Once they're in the game, that is. That's the thing though, we're waiting on better performance and more AI functions to make it into the game, which is where this video is coming from, as things we're still waiting for to arrive into Star Citizen. In Starfield, you get to see it now. You have NPCs who dodge, change cover tactics, or flat out run away. Their store vendors and mission givers work pretty much flawlessly, especially when compared to Star Citizen's current state. And for a new player who comes from Starfield, they might be sorely disappointed to encounter such non-working AI. Scanning in Starfield is just marvelous. It's easily one of my favorite features about the game and is so badly needed to be improved upon in Star Citizen that it's not even funny. Now, we have seen glimpses of it from CitizenCon last year, and much of what we've seen is similar to what we have seen in Starfield, and I would say it might even be better than Starfield's in some areas. But again, it's not in game yet, and FPS scanning has been something we've needed for years now and was due to be introduced into the verse a couple of years ago before the direction focused back to Squadron 42, and they're working on it. Starfield scanning is just phenomenal, and one thing I really love about it is how it will show you the path to your next objective, which thankfully is a big deal since much of Starfield's mapping and quest markers are not the best at times. But I do hope that Star Citizen also picks up on some of the cues that scanning can do, which segues into the next item on the list. Anytime you ask people to name some of their favorite ships that are lacking playability in Star Citizen, exploration vehicles are usually at the top of the list, and for good reason. For many players, science and exploration is what they want from their space games, and yet science does not play a part in Star Citizen, at least not yet, but it needs to. In Starfield, I have enjoyed going around to various planets, and I whip out my trusty scanner and I begin scanning for flora and animals, or the resources that are on the planet. While in orbit of planets, I scan planets, and I love seeing all the various elements and their periodic table names. Science needs to be more a part of mining in Star Citizen, and researching and gathering missions should be a thing, even if it's just sending us into caves to collect a few resources we have now, or if there were alien dung piles to search through for various genetic materials to go through. These are things that could be added into the game now that would enrich the experience before we get scanning or more scientific features into the game. These are various time sinks that could be placed into the game through its current mission systems that would not require new vast directions in the game while we wait on Squadron 42. Give us some scientific reputation and scientist mission givers to also further expand out the lore that we have in game now, even if it's just to go out and collect things. It's steadily being teased in Star Citizen, but besides being able to craft your own multi-tool and a couple of accessories for it, crafting has been very tight-lipped in Star Citizen and we've barely seen anything. But there is some life there, as we've heard it mentioned here and there over the past year. Now to me, this is one of those things that needs to be added into the game now. As we've seen with pharmaceutical workstations in Starfield, all it needs to be is a table where you can interact with it, have items in your inventory, and then select the item you need and craft it. Adding a crafting station to the medical ships in-game now, that would allow us to seek out some various plants or other resources around the verse to bring back to craft our own med pens or medical goop could be a simple start, but crafting in Star Citizen needs to go above and beyond that to where we can make our own armor, weapons, and upgrades for those items, especially being able to repair those things as that's coming into the game soon. Special resources can be tied to mission rewards or reputation. Medical NPCs or scientists could offer up reputation or missions for us to go out and seek plant life in the caves we rarely go into, or on planet surfaces where the temps are hot or cold. There's so much this game can offer even now before a true full crafting experience is introduced to just tease what's possible and something Starfield players will show up expecting to see in such an expansive game. So I'm not asking for Star Citizen to get RPG missions similar to Starfield. I know what Star Citizen is trying to be and what it isn't. Getting Bethesda level NPCs and missions is not part of the goal, but a better mission diversity needs to happen. Now, the missions team in Star Citizen are a stellar bunch of people and who we all owe our thanks to, despite missions at times not working correctly, which can be traced mainly to server performance in most cases. But overall, there are so many mission types that we could have that we simply do not. Let's just take delivery missions as an example. These missions could be used to help new players in Star Citizen get to know their surroundings, especially the starter cities. How about you get some mission alert that someone in the apartment needs a burrito delivered, or a security force member at the spaceport needs some ammo because he forgot to grab some this morning and is too embarrassed to let his other members know. This gives players lessons on how to traverse the cities, all while doing random delivery missions. Add directions to the Mobiglass to show the path to the trams and whatnot as well, and you have a better new player experience overall. That's just a simple example. There's so many other mission types that can be used to instruct new players or to flesh out the lore of the verse. Now I know, this one is a long-term goal and we're only just now about to get our first system expansion, but planet diversity in Star Citizen will be a letdown for players until we have around 4 to 5 systems in place. I think my favorite screenshots so far I've taken in Starfield have been things we just don't have in Star Citizen, such as amazing vistas from orbiting planets almost eclipsing the skies. Not only the background scenery, but also places like Neon where you have a settlement that is in the middle of the ocean. Not to mention the various alien-looking plants with various colors and harsh or toxic environments that also can have different biomes on the same planets. Now here's where Star Citizen is simply lagging behind with no real clues as to when we can expect something meaningful. There have been hints and even downright fakery showing creatures in Star Citizen, but nothing in-game yet, except for some lifeless roly-poly bugs, and nothing to the degree we've seen in Starfield. For me, going back to the science of Starfield and the exploration, the creatures and strange-looking fauna we have to scan and interact with for material adds a missing layer to the landscapes and brings on more of an emotional attachment. Starfield shows that you do not have to have a full ecosystem with tens or hundreds of plants and animal species to make it feel a little alive. Even with just a creature species or two, or perhaps 3 or 4 exotic plant species, they make the world feel alien and alive. Star Citizen has a lot of catching up to do in this regard, with Bethesda having the luxury of years of experience in this area of development through their other games. Good animal AI takes time, along with the design, rigging, and animations. Even just getting some alien interactions from the existing lore aliens in Star Citizen will add to some excitement, and I look forward to when we can see Vandal wreck ships or outposts that we could run across. But creatures, even some that are docile or territorial if provoked, will add something players from either game would appreciate. Of course, if there were to be an all-out important feature that Star Citizen needs to improve on before the masses of fans that play Starfield come over, it would be the performance first most, and then the many game-breaking bugs that continue to plague Star Citizen. There are too many times when we experience some awesome moments in Star Citizen, only for them to be ruined by a mission you cannot complete, or a crash to desktop or 30k that removes your invested time and makes you have to start over, or infuriate you enough to quit that session or to not come back to the game at all. To me, this is what hurts Star Citizen the most in terms of setting the stage for new players who arrive, and what I see drive those new players away faster than anything else. I cannot say that Starfield is not without its own issues, but overall, after playing for many hours this past week, I can truly say that I have experienced nothing on the same level of game-breaking issues with Starfield that we have in Star Citizen. I do not need a lesson on why that is, nor on what Star Citizen is trying to accomplish versus what Starfield is. I know that a game dealing with networking players through servers and the internet is not a good comparison to a single-player RPG game. But at the same time, no matter what each are trying to do, they are both claiming to be playable, and both are pushing players to come spend money on them with promises of playing a game. Granted, one has the huge asterisk of being an alpha, but at the end of the day, when you're advertising your game as playable and to come check it out, you also need to be honest and a little more transparent on what a player can really expect to experience. You never see missions that cannot be completed, or a player being yeeted off of stairs at an outpost to their death, or falling through elevators in any of their patch trailers. The ASOP terminals not working correctly or losing your cargo, and thus money from a crash, were certainly not in the now infamous 318 Play Now trailer, where thousands of players simply could not log into the game for months on end. It's misleading, and anyone who denies this clearly has not had to have a conversation with a new player, where we're basically saying to them that they need to get ready for things to not work and trying to set their expectations for some frustrations, because that is the truth of it. The experienced players do not sidestep these facts when talking to new players, and neither should the advertising for the game. Alright, that's going to do it for this video. Now, this isn't me saying Starfield is a better game. It's just me saying that before Chris Roberts gets all excited about the prospect of these Starfield players coming over to his game, either make the game perform better or be more honest in what you're presenting. Yes, you can experience some truly epic moments in Star Citizen, and no game has taken my breath away or tickled so many awesome moments where you can literally find ways to do things that are so limiting in other games, and the sandbox nature of Star Citizen has most games beat anywhere, but you cannot advertise your game the same way others do. Those players you are hoping to gain from Starfield will quickly notice what the game is not, or what it's not being honest about, and bang their drum loudly for all to hear, and add another coat of tarnish on the game that it simply doesn't need. Let's hope server meshing makes things somewhat better, and that Pyro ushers in a new era for the game. That is truly my hope. Until then though, be kind to your fellow gamer, enjoy the space game renaissance, and let's hope it keeps on rolling, and stay positive citizens.